The rusty husk of Betsy, my Ford 8N, lay smoldering, a testament to the bitter feud that had consumed Harmony Ridge. The acrid smoke, a dark, oily plume, twisted upwards, staining the twilight sky, a grim reminder of the night's violent act. It wasn't just a tractor that had been destroyed. It was a symbol, a representation of my stubborn independence, my refusal to bow to the petty tyranny of the Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association. The conflict had started subtly, a slow, insidious creep of rules and regulations. At first, it was just suggestions, polite requests to trim my hedges, to repaint my fence, to conform to the aesthetic standards of the community. I, Silas Tanner, a man who valued his solitude and his freedom, had politely declined. My 10 acres, a sprawling expanse of land on the outskirts of Harmony Ridge, was my sanctuary, a place where I could live as I pleased, free from the constraints of societal expectations. Richard Sterling, the self-appointed president of the HOA, was a man of meticulously crafted appearances. His smile was always a practiced curve, his handshake firm but not too firm, his words carefully chosen to convey an air of authority and benevolence. He was a real estate agent, a master of persuasion, a man who believed in the power of conformity. He saw Harmony Ridge not as a community of individuals, but as a product, a carefully curated image to be sold to the highest bidder. My refusal to join the HOA was a thorn in his side, an affront to his carefully constructed vision. He saw my property, with its untamed hedges and its weathered barn, as an eyesore, a blight on the otherwise pristine landscape of Harmony Ridge. He couldn't abide the thought of someone living outside his control. The suggestions soon turned into demands, the polite requests into veiled threats. Flyers appeared in my mailbox, detailing the benefits of joining the HOA, the responsibilities of homeowners, the penalties for noncompliance. Phone calls followed, their tone shifting from friendly persuasion to thinly veiled intimidation. Sterling himself even paid me a visit, his smile strained, his eyes hard. "Silas," he'd said, his voice dripping with forced cordiality, "we're just trying to improve the neighborhood. Increase property values. Create a sense of community." "My property value is just fine," I'd retorted, "and I don't need a community telling me how to mow my lawn." The battle lines were drawn. The harassment escalated. My mailbox was vandalized, my garden was trampled, and once I even found a dead squirrel nailed to my porch. Each incident was a calculated act of aggression, a deliberate attempt to intimidate me, to force me into submission. I reported these incidents to the sheriff, but they were dismissed as minor disputes, the work of petty vandals. Sterling, of course, denied any involvement, his smooth words masking the malice in his eyes. But the burning of Betsy, that was no minor dispute. It was a blatant act of arson, a deliberate act of destruction, a declaration of war. My tractor, a vintage Ford 8N, nicknamed Betsy, was more than just a machine. It was a part of my history, a symbol of my connection to the land, a testament to the hard work and self-reliance that I valued above all else. To see it reduced to a smoldering ruin was a blow, not just to my property, but to my very soul. The tractor, in its own way, stood as a symbol of my defiance. It was old, worn, but still functional, a testament to the enduring power of simplicity and practicality. It wasn't flashy or modern, but it was reliable, dependable, a true workhorse. It was a symbol of the life I chose to live, a life of independence and self-sufficiency, a life that the HOA sought to extinguish. Richard Sterling and his HOA cronies saw my refusal to join as a threat to their authority, a challenge to their carefully constructed illusion of control. They couldn't tolerate the idea of someone living outside their rules, someone who dared to question their power. They saw my independence as a contagion, a disease that threatened to spread throughout the community, undermining their carefully crafted image of conformity. The HOA's overreach was not limited to my property. They sought to control every aspect of life in Harmony Ridge, from the color of your mailbox to the length of your grass. They imposed fines for minor infractions, they issued warnings for perceived violations, they even sent out compliance officers to patrol the streets, enforcing their rules with an iron fist. They held meetings where they debated the minutiae of lawn care, the placement of bird feeders, the acceptable color of outdoor furniture. They created committees to oversee everything from holiday decorations to trash disposal. They turned Harmony Ridge into a bureaucratic nightmare, a place where individuality was stifled and conformity was enforced. Their power was absolute, their authority unquestioned. They operated with impunity, confident in their ability to manipulate the system, to intimidate their opponents, to silence dissent. They saw themselves as the guardians of Harmony Ridge, the protectors of its pristine image, the enforcers of its rules. But they had underestimated me. They had mistaken my quiet demeanor for weakness, my solitude for isolation. They had failed to recognize the fire that burned within me, the unwavering determination that fueled my resistance. The burning of Betsy was a turning point. It was the moment when I realized that I couldn't back down, that I couldn't compromise, that I couldn't allow them to win. I had to fight back, not just for myself, but for everyone who had been bullied, intimidated, and silenced by the HOA. The tractor was not just a symbol of my resistance, it was also a symbol of their overreach, their arrogance, their disregard for the rights of individuals. They had crossed a line, and they were going to pay for it. Then there was Evelyn. Evelyn Sterling. Richard's wife. My Evelyn. Our past was a secret, a hidden chapter in our lives that we had both tried to bury. We had met years ago, before Richard Sterling and his HOA ambitions had entered the picture. We had shared a brief, intense affair, a whirlwind romance that had ended abruptly when she'd announced her engagement to Richard. We'd parted ways, but the memory of our time together lingered, a bittersweet reminder of what could have been. I hadn't seen her in years, but I'd heard whispers. She was unhappy, trapped in a gilded cage, her life dictated by her husband's ambitions. The thought of her being involved in this, even indirectly, made my stomach churn. The hidden relationship added a complex, dangerous layer to the already volatile situation. It was a secret that could destroy lives, a secret that could ignite a firestorm of scandal and recrimination. It was a secret that I had to protect, even as I sought to expose the truth about the HOA. My past with Evelyn was a vulnerability, a weakness that Richard Sterling could exploit. It was a weapon that he could use to discredit me, to undermine my credibility, to destroy my reputation. But it was also a source of strength, a reminder of what I was fighting for, a motivation to expose the truth, to bring down the man who had stolen her happiness. The fact that I was with the president's wife added a layer of danger, a sense of urgency to my fight. It was a high-stakes game, a battle for survival, a struggle for justice. The stakes were high, the risks were great, but the reward was worth it. The knowledge of Evelyn's unhappiness, her trapped existence, fueled my determination. I couldn't stand by and watch her suffer. I had to do something, even if it meant risking everything. The burning of Betsy was not just an attack on my property. It was an attack on my past, on my present, on my future. It was an attempt to erase me, to silence me, to extinguish my spirit. But they had underestimated me. They had ignited a fire that would consume them all. The flames that had consumed Betsy, my tractor, had also ignited a fire within me, a burning desire for justice, a relentless drive to expose the corruption that festered within the Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association. The act of arson was not just a crime, it was a personal affront, a violation of my sanctuary, a challenge to my very existence. It was a clear message: submit or be destroyed. And I, Silas Tanner, was not one to submit. The motivation for retaliation was not simply about replacing a burned tractor. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, restoring my peace, and protecting the community from the HOA's tyrannical grip. It was about proving that power, even when wielded by those who believe themselves untouchable, could be challenged, could be defeated. My campaign began with meticulous documentation. Every incident of harassment, every veiled threat, every act of vandalism was recorded, photographed, and catalogued. I compiled a dossier of evidence, a damning indictment of the HOA's tactics. I filed a formal complaint with the Sheriff's Department, presenting them with a mountain of evidence that could no longer be dismissed as minor disputes. I contacted the local newspaper, providing them with copies of the HOA documents, photographs of the burned tractor, and a detailed account of my experiences. The newspaper, sensing a compelling story, ran a front-page article exposing the HOA's bullying tactics and the community's growing discontent. The story went viral, spreading like wildfire through social media, igniting a firestorm of controversy. I created a blog, a digital platform to share my story, to document the HOA's actions, and to provide a voice for others who had been silenced. The blog became a rallying point for those who had suffered under the HOA's oppressive rule, a place where they could share their experiences, voice their grievances, and find solidarity in their shared struggle. The power dynamics at play were stark and unsettling. The HOA, with its well-funded legal team and its network of influential members, held a significant advantage. They were accustomed to operating with impunity, confident in their ability to manipulate the system and silence dissent. I, on the other hand, was a solitary individual, a lone voice against a powerful institution. But I was not without resources. I had the truth on my side, and I had the support of a growing number of community members who were fed up with the HOA's overreach. I had the determination to fight, the resilience to persevere, and the unwavering belief in the principles of justice and fairness. The challenges were immense. The HOA attempted to discredit me, to portray me as a disgruntled troublemaker, a conspiracy theorist, a threat to the community. They filed a lawsuit against me, alleging defamation and slander. They even hired private investigators to dig into my past, searching for anything they could use to damage my reputation. But their efforts backfired. The more they tried to silence me, the louder my voice became. The more they tried to intimidate me, the more determined I became to expose their corruption. The community, witnessing the HOA's relentless attacks, rallied behind me, their support growing stronger with each passing day. The exposure and consequences were swift and far-reaching. The Sheriff's Department, under pressure from the public and the media, reopened the investigation into the burning of my tractor. The State Attorney General's office launched an investigation into the HOA's financial practices and its compliance with state regulations. The HOA's reputation was shattered. Their credibility was destroyed. Their power was waning. Community members, emboldened by my example, began to challenge the HOA's authority, demanding transparency and accountability. The HOA meetings, once dominated by compliant members, became battlegrounds for heated debates and impassioned pleas for reform. The personal stakes were incredibly high, intensified by my hidden relationship with Evelyn Sterling. The risk of exposure was ever present, threatening to destroy both our reputations and our lives. Richard Sterling, a man obsessed with control and appearances, would not tolerate betrayal. He would seek retribution, not just against me, but against Evelyn as well. I had to tread carefully, to protect Evelyn's identity, to shield her from Richard's wrath. I communicated with her through encrypted messages, meeting her in secluded locations, taking every precaution to avoid detection. The tension was palpable, the danger real. But our connection, forged in the fires of adversity, grew stronger with each passing day. The relationship with Evelyn was not just a source of danger, it was also a source of strength, a reminder of what I was fighting for. I was fighting not just for my own freedom, but for her freedom as well. I was fighting to liberate her from the gilded cage of her marriage, to give her the chance to live a life of happiness and fulfillment. Our shared past, our rekindled connection, provided a powerful motivation, a driving force that fueled my determination to expose the truth. I couldn't allow Richard Sterling to continue his reign of terror, to control and manipulate those around him. I had to bring him down, not just for myself, but for Evelyn, for the community, for everyone who had been wronged by his arrogance and his greed. The personal stakes were not just about our relationship, they were also about my own safety. Richard Sterling was a powerful and ruthless man, capable of anything to protect his interests. I knew that he would not hesitate to use violence, to resort to any means necessary to silence me. I took precautions, installing security cameras around my property, varying my routines, avoiding secluded areas. I even learned to use a firearm, a skill I had never thought I would need. But I was not going to be intimidated. I was not going to be silenced. I was going to fight for what I believed in, even if it meant risking my life. The community impact was profound. The conflict between me and the HOA had divided Harmony Ridge, pitting neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend. The once peaceful community was now a battleground, a place of suspicion and distrust. But the conflict also sparked a sense of civic engagement, a renewed interest in local government, a growing awareness of the importance of individual rights and freedoms. Community members, once passive and apathetic, were now actively participating in town hall meetings, demanding accountability from their elected officials, and organizing grassroots movements for reform. The conflict had forced the community to confront its own complacency, its own willingness to tolerate injustice. It had exposed the dark side of conformity, the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of standing up for what is right. The impact extended beyond the boundaries of Harmony Ridge. The story of my struggle against the HOA resonated with people across the country, sparking conversations about the role of homeowners associations, the balance of power between individuals and institutions, and the importance of protecting individual rights. The conflict had become a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of one person to make a difference. It had inspired others to challenge authority, to fight for justice, to stand up for what they believe in. And that, I realized, was the most significant impact of all. The community of Harmony Ridge, once a picture of tranquil suburban life, was now a fractured landscape, a battleground where the ideals of neighborly harmony clashed violently with the reality of unchecked power. The conflict between myself and the HOA had ripped through the fabric of the town, leaving behind a trail of division and discord. The once familiar streets now held an air of suspicion, the friendly greetings replaced with guarded glances and whispered conversations. The impact on the community was a complex tapestry of reactions. Some residents, long frustrated by the HOA's overbearing rules and arbitrary fines, saw my fight as a beacon of hope, a chance to reclaim their own sense of autonomy. They rallied behind me, their voices joining mine in demanding transparency and accountability. They attended town hall meetings, their presence a powerful symbol of their growing dissatisfaction. They formed grassroots organizations, their efforts focused on reforming the HOA and restoring the community's sense of fairness. Others, however, remained loyal to the HOA, their allegiance rooted in a desire for order and conformity. They saw my actions as disruptive, a threat to the peace and stability of Harmony Ridge. They clung to the illusion of a perfectly manicured community, unwilling to acknowledge the underlying tensions and injustices. They defended the HOA's actions, dismissing my claims as the ramblings of a disgruntled troublemaker. The conflict had created a deep chasm, a divide that ran through the heart of the community. Friendships were strained, neighborly relations soured, and families divided. The once familiar sense of belonging was replaced with a feeling of unease, a sense that the community was no longer a safe haven, but a place of conflict and mistrust. The tension permeated every aspect of life in Harmony Ridge. Children, once free to play in the streets, were now confined to their backyards, their parents wary of the escalating tensions. Social gatherings, once a staple of community life, were now fraught with awkward silences and underlying animosity. Even the local businesses felt the impact, their customers divided along the lines of the conflict. The climax of the story was a confrontation that had been brewing for weeks. The HOA, desperate to regain control, called a special meeting, their agenda focused on silencing my voice and restoring their authority. They packed the meeting hall with their supporters, their faces grim, their eyes filled with hostility. I arrived at the meeting, my presence a defiant challenge to their authority. I was not alone. A crowd of my supporters stood outside, their voices chanting slogans demanding justice and reform. The atmosphere was electric, the tension palpable. Inside the meeting hall, the battle lines were drawn. Richard Sterling, his face flushed with anger, presided over the meeting, his voice booming through the microphone. He launched into a tirade, denouncing me as a troublemaker, a liar, a threat to the community. I stood up, my voice calm and steady, and presented my case. I laid out the evidence, the documents, the photographs, the testimonies of those who had suffered under the HOA's rule. I exposed their corruption, their abuse of power, their disregard for the rights of individuals. The meeting erupted into chaos. Shouts and accusations filled the air. My supporters, their voices rising above the din, demanded a vote of no confidence against the HOA's leadership. The HOA supporters, their faces red with anger, shouted them down. The climax reached its peak when Evelyn Sterling, Richard's wife, stood up. Her voice, though trembling, was clear and resolute. She confirmed my allegations, providing her own testimony of Richard's abusive behavior and the HOA's corrupt practices. Her words, a betrayal to her husband, were a powerful indictment of the HOA's tyranny. The resolution of the story was a hard-won victory. The HOA's leadership was ousted, their power shattered. New elections were held, and a reformed HOA, committed to transparency and accountability, was established. The community, though still scarred by the conflict, began the process of healing. Richard Sterling was arrested for arson and for multiple counts of fraud. Evelyn left Richard and began to build a new life for herself. I continued to live on my land, my peace restored, my independence intact. The resolution was not just about the defeat of the HOA. It was about the restoration of community, the reaffirmation of individual rights, and the triumph of justice over tyranny. It was a testament to the power of one person to make a difference, to challenge authority, and to inspire others to stand up for what they believe in. The scars remained, but the community had learned a valuable lesson. That power, even when wielded by those who believe themselves untouchable, could be challenged, could be defeated, and that the true strength of a community lies not in conformity, but in the courage of its individuals.